what does gutsy mean to you?
Gutsy means like figuring out who the heck you are and getting everybody out of the way and being able to express it without second guessing yourself.
Welcome to the Gutsy Podcast, the show where you learn how to own what you actually want and shift the mind junk that's been holding you back. I'm Laura Ora, keynote speaker, coach, and your guide to help you get clarity, build confidence, and make the gutsy moves that change your life. Each week, I'm going to help you simplify things by teaching you how to get out of your head while stepping into action. This way you can achieve all those life shifts that you've been overthinking. Your desire? That drives you. But gutsy? That's what gets it done. Have you ever woken up from a dream wondering where on earth did that come from and what could this possibly mean? Some can leave you feeling confused, others inspired, or maybe even a little bit terrified. In today's chat, you're going to learn that your dreams are actually a mirror of you. And if you look for what my guest calls the weird thing and explore what its meaning is, you can learn a lot about yourself and your life's direction. Kari is a dream analyst, artist, and expert on Eastern and Western archetypes. Through her platform, Cafe Au Sol, which by the way gets 2 million hits a month, Kari connects nature appreciation with spiritual journeys, and her online I Ching is a top-ranked source globally. She's authored 7 books on dreams, ancient astrology, tarot, and the translation of the Tao Te Ching and I Ching. She's also developed acclaimed apps that create music and enhance yoga and meditation with shamanic drumming and world chants. To put it lightly, Kari is the real deal, and she knows what she's doing. Throughout this episode, she shares a lot of incredible resources with you. So I just want to make sure that you know that everything that she references is going to be linked in the show notes of this episode. And fun fact, you get to hear 2 of my dreams get analyzed. One is a silly dream about me being a meatball, and Kari had an incredible interpretation about what that actually means. And the other is a reoccurring dream that I have about tornadoes. This is a fascinating episode. You're in for a real treat. So let's go ahead and get started. Kari, welcome to the Gutsy Podcast.
Thank you, Laura. It's very nice to meet you.
Yes, likewise. I am super excited to dig into this. I don't think that I was looking back at previous episodes, and I don't think dream interpretation and talking about dreams is something that we've covered on the show. So I'm really excited to dig into this with you.
Awesome.
Yeah. Before we go down that rabbit hole, because I know that we're going to go there, tell me a little bit more about you. How did you get into this work? What has led you to where you are right now?
Well, I always say I was born knowing how to interpret dreams. I did it as a child. Like I just always could understand sort of the metaphorical kind of, I always refer to dreams similar to poetry. There's like, it's not literal, it's like symbolic metaphor. And so I kind of always was tuned into that. And as I grew older, I was successful in other capacities, but I always felt like my drummer was drumming me back to to working with dreams. So I've once the internet got going and I could get online and talk to people all over the world about their dreams, obviously I learned quite a bit about dreams, and I understand dreams to be like an evolutionary mechanism of nature. Like I see it as the only way that we have the opportunity to explore options and possibilities beyond our defense mechanisms, ego, direction. And so I also understanding it, like I have an appreciation for nature. So I write a lot about dreams, but I also write about a lot about what nature can teach us about success, and looking at all the entities on this earth that we share time and space with, and how we're really not different. And, so, and I kind of, I have a website, and I, have basically created a space for people. They can look their dreams up on a dream dictionary if they don't remember their dreams, which we can talk about. Most people don't. I also have an I Ching oracle and a tarot. I see it as Western wisdom and Eastern wisdom, and somebody can kind of have a quiet conversation with themselves and what I find really fascinating, because I do a lot of one-on-one work with people, is that they'll submit their dream and they'll submit one of the oracle readings, and they're always identical. It's
Mm.
crazy. It's crazy. So synchronicity, sort of shows that we're having this conversation with ourselves, no matter whether we're doing something at work and coming up against some conflict, or we do a reading, or we have a dream. We're having this like really profound awakening in every moment, and all and how we're blossoming.
Wow. I love that you said you were born knowing how to do this. Like it's just always something tells me this isn't the first lifetime that you have done this work for sure, because you've just brought forward so much wisdom. And I think it's really interesting. I was playing around on your website before our call too, and I saw that you have like the online tarot and the online I Ching, and I thought that was really fascinating. And wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what I Ching is, because I don't know that that is quite as popular or known as something like tarot.
Okay. So basically, just to kind of, uh when I built the website, it was more of like a dream, a way to work with your dreams. And because of all the work that I had done in exploring our common archetypes, what are the symbols and dreams across the world, and finding our common patterns, kind of what Jung was working on, what Joseph Campbell writes about in his mythology. I was basically led to all the different archetypes from around the world. And so you can see tarot as basically the version of our Western archetypes a lot of it comes from our mythologies and stories and beliefs. And the I Ching is coming from Taoism and China, and like Lao Tzu, Kung Fu Tzu, and it's coming from I would say an older period, because the I Ching is one of our oldest works of literature, probably coinciding with the Epic of Gilgamesh. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, but
I've not.
okay. It's kind of like it. A lot of the stories in the Epic of Gilgamesh are what later we find in the Old Testament. Because the patriarch Abraham was in the Fertile Crescent before he went over to the Promised Land, or where they are today. So you find a lot of those old stories going back to like 2500 BC, 1500 BC. And so the I Ching is a very old book. And even though we use it as an oracle, it's also a really profound book of philosophy, and Taoism and the I Ching. They were used to kind of help leaders. I don't know if you've ever read much of Lao Tzu, because I also have an interpretation of the Tao Te Ching, but it's kind of like the best of all leaders follows behind. So all these ideas that you find in the Tao Te Ching, a lot of them are coming from the I Ching. And so as an oracle, um, basically, there's the idea of yin and yang. And what's fascinating about Taoism, and yin and yang comes from Taoism, is that there, when you think of like our binary system today, there was a guy, Gottfried Leibniz, I think in the 17th century or 1700s. He basically was using the I Ching and turning it on its side. And how can so many like possibilities come out of just a yin and a yang line, an open and a closed line? And that became our binary system. Everything that's driving technology today, you have these open and closed signals, right? I don't know if you're aware of that, but this all goes back to the I Ching. So a lot of physicists, a lot of scientists are really into Taoism and these ideas. So the way that the I Ching works, and I hope I'm not confusing this with too much
No,
information.
it's fascinating. No,
Okay.
I am leaning in, as I'm sure that the listeners are too.
Okay, so yin would be like the moon, night, the responsiveness, the quiet, our dream state, everything that would be, receptive. And yang would be like day and the height of summer and our power, and the energy of doing. And I always describe a way of understanding yin and yang by looking at electromagnetism. and because with electromagnetism, the charge is creating a magnetic field, and the magnetic field is pulling the charge, which is creating the magnetic field. And it's like there, it isn't that there's one, there's just electromagnetism. It encompasses both a receptive pulling force or energy and a pushing sort of energy. And so to the Taoists, they saw everything in life as being yin and yang. It's the same hill. It looks different in the dark than by day, but it's the same hill. So anyway, when you're working with an I Ching reading, you there's 64 hexagrams, and these 64 hexagrams portray some part of nature in its perpetual state of change. And in order to arrive at a hexagram, you throw yarrow stalks or coins, and you get either a yin or a yang line. And there's six, you throw it 6 times so that it builds the hexagram from the bottom up. And sometimes there you throw what would be called a old or young line, which then changes it. So a lot of times either you'll get like an answer that's inspired by some element of nature that is in an unchanging form, which really puts a lot of emphasis on the teaching of that particular principle. Or there was an older yin or yang line transforming, and you get what's called a changing hexagram. So it would be like hexagram 2 changing to hexagram 54. And so I always say the lines, which I think I have the number one I Ching that's in popularity, or, it's pretty much right now. But, and I think it's because of a lot of the line interpretations that I do, the way I interpret the lines or whatever. But I always say it's like, before you get lost in the lines, just look at the two principles, 2 and 54, because sometimes those lines are just a means to an end. So where tarot is basically, you're using these different archetypes and how their placement sort of describes you, somebody in your life, where you were, where you're going, where the cards lay out. In the I Ching, it's a different process, but the answer is sort of similar, where it's kind of showing you your condition, what's could be changing around you, what would be required to get what it is that you want. But the difference between tarot and I Ching is that when you're working with the I Ching, it's like working with an ancient master. There's a lot of a sense of it being a cone, like it calls you out. Tarot, you can sit and you can throw a million readings, keep going. Well, what's he thinking? What's he thinking? Or, people can just keep asking questions. In the I Ching, sometimes you'll get an answer that's like, hey, stop doing it. Like it will basically poke fun at you and say, I just gave you an answer. Now chew on that for a while and come back tomorrow. Or, and it's really, I think, like it, and the element of working with kind of a Taoist or a Zen master, is anybody who's and it's funny because I have an equal amount of people that are really into the tarot readings on my site, and I find a lot more men are into the I Ching. Like there's a lot more science that's attached to Taoism, and But anyway, I don't know if that answered your question.
It absolutely did, and it's fascinating. And I'm kind of curious. Because I that was actually the first thing I went to on your website was this I Ching reading, and I pulled one. Would you be willing to share a little bit about what I pulled?
Sure.
So it's a 46 changing to 4. I'm not sure if there's other information that you want or need from what this page is saying.
Pushing upwards.
Mm-hmm.
Did you read the explanation it gave you?
I did.
Okay, so it's like pushing upward into youthful folly.
Yes.
Do you remember what lines were changing?
Line 3 and 6 are listed on the page.
Okay. So basically pushing upward is a concept of like trying to break out of a sense of being in an enclosure, or just the element of ascending, changing, growing, that sort of thing. And then it brings youthful folly up with it. So the first overarching message would be there's something that there's maybe something that you have on your horizon that you're working towards. and you may be stumbling. Youthful folly is kind of like when you have the sense of having to kind of do it over. You know what I mean? Like the way that you're doing it isn't maybe the right way. So you have to kind of, think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you read the second hexagram when it went through? Because that's like the big message for me with youthful folly is try again. And when you think of the hexagrams, there's always a nuclear hexagram in there too, and I call it the Hu-Gao, and it's without going too much and confusing everybody. Every hexagram has a nuclear hexagram, and I like to look at the nuclear hexagram as a way of understanding the deeper dimension of the hexagram. So when we think of hexagram 4, youthful folly, the nuclear hexagram is going back, return 24. So, and that's where you get the sense of try again. So the message would be whatever it is you're trying to achieve, you may be stumbling, you may be feeling like it's facing a wall. Don't give up, because it's something you have to kind of go back and look at your steps. And one thing too is I think you mentioned you had one of the lines in 46 was about like advancing into an empty city. Do you remember reading that?
I do. Yes.
Okay, yeah. And that's always a sense of like maybe the path you think that you're supposed to go forward into is not necessarily where you're supposed to be. So it does look like you're meeting some kind of obstacle. You're really trying to ascend out of maybe a situation that you'd like to see change. Does that resonate
It
with you?
resonates very deeply. When I read through it, I was like, well, how do you know me? And then hearing you reshare it, like you said, it's kind of direct, like, hey, here's the truth, here's what you need to kind of chew on for a little while. And it's
Mhm.
really interesting because I'm actually in the process right now of shifting things around. So at time of recording right now, everyone will be listening to this a little bit later, but at time of recording, I'm shifting my focus on how I'm growing myself as a speaker and a coach, because the way that I've been trying to do it for the last 3 years has not really been working. And so I'm just pivoting a little bit and shifting my focus and trying some new things. So when I was reading this and hearing you explain it,
Uh-huh.
it's like, well, that's pretty damn dead on.
And one other thing I'll add is the idea from the nuclear hexagram of 4 of going back, like return. So it could be that you had some vision before your path got you to where you are today that you might go back and revisit and see if it, you know what I mean? Like going back to your what we call original sincerity, what it was that you were really passionate about, and maybe you got pulled into what everybody wanted you to do, or so that would be kind of another message.
Yeah, that resonates as well, very, very deeply. Wow. Thank you for interpreting that with us here today. I just thought it would be neat for everyone to hear, kind of what that looks and sounds like. And I will make sure, if you guys are interested in doing this as well, I'll link directly to this. I don't want to call it a quiz, but it's where you take the steps that I did to find that information. I'll put that link in the show notes.
You mean on my website, you mean?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
just
yeah.
letting everybody know that they'll be able to click on it directly to go straight to your website and put in their
Oh,
information.
okay. Right.
So let's transition into dreams, because I think this is just such a fascinating topic. And there's so many different aspects and so many different interpretations. I think it would be neat to start with, though, like, what are dreams and where are they coming from?
Okay, so in my opinion, and I've been doing this like again, like many decades. I've been working with thousands, hundreds, I don't know, I wouldn't say 100,000 possibly, but many people's dreams from all over the world, so it's not like I'm just coming up with uh some idea. This is really it's coming from a lot of research. What I noticed first and foremost is that when somebody, like for example, I just had a client the other day, without going into too much detail, there was like a dream about a little girl eating a Band-Aid, and it made her sick, and she was on a boat with some people, and the boat's name was the Castaways. And in working with the client, there was no discussion about what the dream was revealing, but it definitely was showing that there was some wound that needed to be discussed and, associated with being cast away. And come to find out, in her marriage, the way that it ended, that's how it felt. And so I feel like dreams they understand the dreamer better than the dreamer understands themselves. That's something that I observe when I'm working with people. It's almost like I get in touch with a voice that they don't even know they have, because they'll tell me their dream and I'm like, well, clearly this is what's going on. Oh, really? Yeah, that's right. This is what's going on. They don't want to tell you because they had the band-aid over it, and they don't want to like speak about it. But once they do, then all of a sudden there's an opportunity, for change. And so in that particular dream, the little girl, I call it the unknown child archetype. A lot of times when we'll have like lots of conflicted dreams with lots of conflict or whatever. And then eventually there'll be this little child that all of a sudden we're responsible to take care of. And we don't know the child, but that's sort of the budding new self that's emerging, through the transformation. So we know that dreams have a sense of the dreamer that's more profound than what the dreamer understands about themselves. And if you think of it in religious terms, there's stories from the book of Job, which actually traces back to an Arabian story. But in that story that then becomes part of the Old Testament, that's how God talks to us, or, and in my vision of it, it seems like nature has designed us. Okay, here we are in the survival mode most of the day. We're always looking for what's wrong, what's out of place, what we can fix, what we need to do. We have that driving us. And then when we go to sleep, there's a lot of the brain that has to do with like logic and survival and ego orientation. We're paralyzed when we sleep, so we don't act out on our dreams. It's like nature has designed us to have this playground where we can explore opportunities for change, and options. So, in my opinion, it's an evolutionary mechanism. It's the only way that that life can continue to reach us, to help us individuate, to help ensure that we're not falling prey to conformity and becoming what, oh, this is the new thing, go do that. Well, what does it have to do with, your blueprint, your unique, nature? So why do they appear so confusing? Why do they seem so bizarre? Would that be your next question?
It absolutely is.
Because, I like to think of the brain, obviously there's no one that can tell us clearly, what the secret is to how the brain works, or ego. Uh, there's a lot of different ideas about how consciousness works. But the way I kind of look at it is we have the right brain and the left brain. And the left brain we would associate with language and logic. And the right brain is really imagery driven, and it's symbolic, and it's relating. Like we might be in the street and see a ball, and the left brain is saying it's a ball. The right brain's going, yeah, but it's round and the world's round. And why did it come now? And, and, and actually there's a book by a guy, Julian Jaynes, that basically his premise, it's called The Origin of Consciousness. And his premise is that consciousness developed with language. So his name's Julian Jaynes, to anybody who wants to kind of dig more into that. It's pretty fascinating because he's comparing the consciousness of a 3-year-old to the Homeric period, or when they were writing that the gods were speaking to them, and then as children develop language, they get more into kind of a concrete, ego oriented sort of awareness. But anyway, so the right brain is where we are when we're dreaming. That's the way I look at it. So everything is more symbolic, and again, we're like exploring things that we wouldn't allow into consciousness by day. That's why they can be so revealing when you're working with someone like me, when you just feel isolated and depressed and you don't understand why. Dreams can really reveal what's going on, what you're protecting, what you're hiding, because we dream about what we're not facing. The problem with remembering our dreams is that we're in this right brain, imagery driven landscape, and we wake up into the left brain. And the left brain's like, no, push it away. I pushed it away for a reason. I don't want to face that. I don't want to know, and we start thinking about what we have to do today and blah, blah, blah. The dream evaporates. And then you say, well, why didn't nature design us to remember our dreams? That's a good question. Like, I feel like it's this yin and yang, we're equally yang in ourselves through the world. And then we're yin in ourselves to sleep. And somewhere between the push and the pull, um, there's, there's, there's still this free will that's going to be applied to manifest our unique destiny, which I don't know if you want to ask me a little more about dreams, or if I could just speak a little bit about our uniqueness, which is another thing that I think dreams are. So I feel like, when I like knowing that nature designed us with this ability to keep growing. If we didn't have it, we probably would stagnate. We would not ever change. It led me to do a lot of work in understanding all the different creatures and all the ways of nature. That's, this thing that's been perfecting itself for billions of years, right? And you look out like into a landscape of like flowers and trees and butterflies, and at this particular moment, everything that you see is the best of what nature has designed up to this point in time. Because we know with survival of the fittest or with evolution, everything is nature's throwing opposites together. Sometimes we see it as conflict, but it's basically trying out all these new ways to perfect itself, to be stronger, whatever. I see it as a very like powerfully good thing. Well, human beings are, composed of like a DNA combination that you're not going to be like your parents. You're not going to be like even your siblings, because your variation is going to be slightly different. How much you got from your mom, how much you got from your grandpa, And so we are each, incredibly unique, and we have this access to this inner blueprint. And that's where like dreams and intuition and these feelings that, wow, I'm not fulfilled in this role, this job I'm in. I need to like, but I'm not sure what it is I'm supposed to do. That's where dreams can be really, helpful. For example, in the 80s, that shows you how old I am. I was a buyer on Rodeo Drive, Trump Towers, New York, Beverly Hills Hotel, traveling around the world. Had this job that everybody thought was like, the coolest job ever. Getting decked out in fancy clothes like the devil wears Prada.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept dreaming that I was getting on a plane to go on the buying trip, and I didn't have my makeup. And in the dream, that was like enough to stop me from going on the trip. And, I later saw that, well, the makeup is this face. I mean, when I would go to these shows, and I was so turned off by the, what's the word? The superficial, when you're out at the shows and the way everybody's acting, there wasn't a lot of authenticity and I don't know, getting down to earth.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like I wasn't relating to it. It was feeling really like it's really a cool place, but I don't think it's right for me. And that kind of led me back into the work that I do today, right? Like, so it wouldn't, if I wouldn't have had that dream, maybe I wouldn't have recognized or felt led to go ahead and reinvent myself. And it's not so much that I'm reinventing myself out of nothing. I'm reinventing myself from my own intuition, from my own dissatisfaction, And so I just, I think that it's easy for us to go out into the world through school or whatever, through social media, and see life as a place where I have to be doing what everybody else is doing. Oh, they're doing this now. Well, I got to do that too. And there comes a point where no, you don't have to do that. In fact, you're probably going to be much happier if you, follow your own drummer.
If you've been wanting to do something but always seem to talk yourself out of it, then I've got a free tool that's going to help you move forward. I've put together a free 5-day private podcast experience for you. If you sign up at lauraora.com/foundations or scroll down in the show notes and click on the link. Every day for 5 days, I'm going to send you short, bite-sized ways teaching you the method to be able to get out of your own head so that you can move forward. It's simple, it's digestible, and it just might change your life. Sign up and get instant access at lauraora.com/foundations. Right. So our dreams are a way for us to connect with our most aligned self, with our most divine uniqueness, is what I'm hearing you say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I call it the unknown self. It's the more, that's the more real version of who we are. I mean, I always think one of the things I'll write about one day, because I have like 7 books, but one is like, who guides our dreams? Like, because that's really a question that I can't answer at this point. Like, I could say nature does, or God, or what, whatever you want to call it. But what I know that the dreams are giving us information that if we listen to it, can really help us, like, channel our unique qualities and the gifts that we're here to share.
Yeah. Is there any significance in the dreams that are so incredibly vivid that you wake up and you know every detail versus the ones that are kind of foggy or, just not quite as clear? Is there significance between those two things?
I think that we tend to remember the dreams that have more of an emotional impact, because that's what dreams are doing. Just like if you read, that's the reason I compare them to poetry, is like we'll hear a poem and it's describing something in a language that's not literal, and yet it's having this it's touching us deeply. And that's kind of happening when we dream. It's like the imagery is not literal and doesn't necessarily make sense, but it's getting a real deep emotional impact out of us. Sometimes they can be gory. Sometimes someone's chasing us and trying to kill us. I call that the dream of the 20-something crowd of attack and being chased, which is one of the words on my website that can be searched, is attack and being chased. But those types of dreams, because they've had such an emotional resonance with us, we tend to remember them. But again, they're not literal. Like somebody might dream of something very gory and be like a nurse at a hospital, or sometimes the imagery is coming from what they're surrounding themselves with, you know what I mean? But it's still telling a story that is a little bit different, like
Right.
you might watch a movie and then some of the content from the movie feeds into what you're dreaming about. And one thing I always say too is that you don't have to remember your dreams. They're still changing you. Like I'd say 98% of the time we don't remember our dreams. And then the ones that are really colorful that cause us to kind of ponder them and maybe research or talk to someone about it or whatever, they tend to be more profound. And I always say that look for the weird thing in the dream, like in the dream I was referring to the other that I was working on with a client. The little girl was eating the Band-Aid, which is very odd, but that's talking, the mouth, chewing on it, digesting an idea, the Band-Aid, the wound, so it's kind of like look for what's weird in the dream, and that's usually where you get the aha, like this is what that's interesting because I didn't look at it that way, or this is what's going on in my life, but that adds a new bit of understanding. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind
Yeah.
of like, and sometimes when they are the vivid or weird, we tend to remember them.
Yeah, that's for sure. Those ones you wake up and you're like, what in the actual hell just happened while I was sleeping? Is there a way to know the difference between seeing something like you mentioned the movie? If I watch a movie and a piece of that movie comes into the dream, is there a way to understand the difference between stuff we've picked up throughout the day versus actual messages?
Well, the only reason that something's in your dream is because it's relevant for you,
Hmm.
right? So like even the landscape, somebody could say, "Oh, I dreamed that I was like in this desert." Well, that immediately tells me what their inner garden is like at this point in time. There's like a little bit of a lack of emotion and water and, wetness or whatever. Could be an icy landscape. So everything in the dream is like a mirror of our inner world. And, so just because some of the content, the fodder, I call it, is coming from the ideas of the day before or whatever, it's still in the dream because it has relevance for exploration for you at this point in time. And you might have watched something and it kind of like hit you on one level, but maybe it got dragged into the dream because whoever or whatever it is that's pushing us to keep transforming and evolving and growing knows that that's kind of going to get your attention. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
maybe get an emotional response. So I wouldn't negate anything just because it came from an idea that you saw the day before. It's still in your dream for a reason. In
So,
fact, when I'm working with people, I used to spend a lot more time doing comprehensive dream work where somebody could send 5 dreams in a week and I'd like dissect it sentence by sentence. So every single little thing in a dream, you can unpack it and have like a huge discussion about it. I mean, nothing is lost, nothing is irrelevant.
that makes sense. So even if you're influenced by something in your waking hours, it's showing up in the dream because there's significance for it.
Exactly.
Hmm. Fascinating. Super fascinating. So, would you recommend should we analyze every dream that we have? I mean, is there like an end to it, or do we stay open to each one that we're remembering, or what's kind of a good gauge for that?
Well, I would say like in the beginning part of my work over many decades, I thought that it was the right thing to do was like wake everybody up to how important their dreams are. But, I got kind of like to a point where it's like, well, maybe that's not necessary. Like I was mentioning before, I notice over and over, like there's coaching work that I offer now that somebody can bring me one dream and one oracle reading a week. And that's what we'll use to work on in our session. It's kind of a 1 hour session. And by doing that, I started to see that, oh my God, like that dream is everything in that dream is exactly in this oracle reading. Like if you would have told me what you had dreamed the last few days, it's probably a lot like 46 changing to 4, in the I Ching. So I don't think nature designed us to remember our dreams like for a reason. So it's not so important that we do. But I would say if you're in conflict, if you're dissatisfied, if you're feeling lost, then yeah, like try to work with your dreams because it can sort of fast forward your breakthrough. And then you're going to say, well, how do you remember them? you know, and yeah. Can you tell I've done these interviews
Just
before?
a time or two.
I'm sorry.
It's wonderful. I think it's wonderful.
No, but so because we're in this like imagery driven state of awareness and we're going to slip into this like, oh gosh, what do I got to do today? I always say wake up really slow, and even right before you're waking up, just try to think of one symbol, just one, and then as you're like, oh, I dreamt of like a shoe. Oh yeah, there was like this, it was kind of like an elf shoe, and then just keep saying elf shoe as you're waking up or whatever, before even thinking or analyzing, write it down. And then just be gentle. Try to stay in that more creative right brain space and see if more of the imagery. Okay, yeah, it was an elf shoe. And for some reason we were in a grocery store and I remember I was trying to catch a plane, like and more of it will come. And then I find that when people do start recording their dreams or paying attention to them, they do seem to recall them more.
Gotcha. Okay. So stay in that kind of foggy dream-like state before you whip your eyes open and start getting into your day.
Exactly. And don't feel like you have to remember everything. Just try to grab one symbol out of the fog, and bring it back with you as a word because you're going to the left brain.
Okay. That's helpful because I think sometimes we get frustrated. I mean, I do anyway. I get frustrated when I'm like, oh, I know there was more to this, but I can't remember that. But you're telling us we don't have to remember all those details. What we're remembering is the symbolism that we need to work with.
Exactly. And sometimes once you do have that one word and you just sort of go, oh yeah, and like you get back into like the feeling of it, and the rest of the landscape starts to like permeate again, starts to become a little bit more visible and you can remember more of the dream.
Amazing. So I know that there are some kind of reoccurring types of dreams. I mean, everyone has their own like details, but kind of categories and types of dreams. Would you be willing to walk us through some of the ones that you hear the most and what they tend to mean?
Yeah, I mean, a recurring dream is very important because what I find is when somebody is having a recurring dream, it doesn't stop recurring until they get what the message is. I see that happen over and over. So when you're having a recurring dream, I think it's important to definitely get to the bottom of what it is. Some of the similar dreams that I see among people is obviously teeth falling out. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but
I've never personally had that one, but I hear a lot of people have that one.
you go to say something and all of a sudden your teeth are like falling out. I see that one a lot. And I think that has to do with like credibility and honesty. And are we really saying what we feel and what we mean? So a lot of, teeth come out during monumental times of our life, like our wisdom teeth, and then in an old age or something. So a lot of times it can represent sort of going through kind of a shift, like a major transformation. But a lot of times I see that associated with credibility, and I would always say like, what is it you're trying to sell everybody? Because I'm not sure that you're telling the truth. You know what I mean? Not to call you a liar, but you just might not be being honest with yourself, kind of thing. Another one is jumping on and off of trains. I don't know, or like subways and stuff like that.
Okay.
And transportation symbols, each one has a different meaning. Like we can be in a car and it becomes important. Are we driving? Are we in the back seat? And transportation symbols, they portray our motivation. So if we're in a boat, it can be like how we're moving forward emotionally. If we're in a car, who's driving us in our life right now? And is the car out of control? Have we lost it? Because maybe we're thinking of changing careers or something. So we're looking for a car in some parking lot that we can't find, or and so like the train or subway tracks or stuff like that relates to like ideas that we feel were put down for us. Like our parents expected this and we got to follow through. Maybe we're in the course of finishing college or doing something that we feel like we can't really change it because those tracks have been laid out for us. And so a lot of times people would dream of jumping on and off of trains, like when they're considering like not following what their parents expect of them. All of a sudden they're making their own decisions. Um, I mentioned earlier the attack and being chased dream,
Yes.
which is really popular among people in their 20s. Now, Laura, I'm not sure what decade are you in?
I am 39.
Okay. So it seems like when we're growing up, let's say we get into our teens and we still have a sense of who we are in the family unit, what mom and dad thinks we are, and we have this sense of self that's coming from, our childhood. And then as we start to go away to school, we leave school, we graduate, we go into the workforce. All of a sudden, identities can be put on us a lot faster than we can assimilate them. Like you might be sort of a introverted person with a lot of really great marketing ideas, and all of a sudden, oh, by the way, you're in charge of these 5 people. And maybe that's not something that feels comfortable to you. So the way identities are thrust on us so quickly in our 20s before we really understand who we are, that when we're dreaming of somebody attacking us or trying to kill us, that's the new identity. That is, and so they're very common. If a lot of people will dream that somebody's trying to kill them, and then at the end they just like, okay, they don't allow it, or they say, okay, I'm going to just give in to it, or and it happens a lot in the 20-year-old crowds that are like trying to learn more about their identity. I think once people move more into the 30s, the dreams aren't conflict in that way. It's not that the conflict dream goes away, but I think they're a little bit more intense in our 20s.
Yeah, I can see that, being chased by expectations and societal stuff and new roles and responsibilities. I mean, it
Hmm.
makes total sense. I've only have one reoccurring dream, and it's always about a tornado. And I've looked it up so many different times because I don't dream about the same thing twice except tornadoes, and it
Hmm.
only seems to happen in kind of like big pivotal or like right on the brink of something type of milestones in my life.
Hmm.
And man, I tell you what, I wake up sweating from those.
Okay, so are you in a building like that you would call a house or
So it's not the same dream, but it's this the tornado is
theme?
present. The
Right,
theme is the same, right? So
right.
sometimes I'm outside, sometimes I'm in a house, sometimes I'm literally in the middle, like standing in the eye of it. Sometimes I see it off in a distance. Sometimes there's one big one, sometimes there's four small ones, and but the theme is tornadoes and
Okay.
that threat.
Okay, so the first thing I would ask you is how are you a tornado?
Oh,
Because everything in the dream is representing you. So it could be that there's a side of you that is kind of like loves to reinvent yourself or whip everything up from scratch or start over or the energy of change. Because what is a tornado? The tornado is kind of like it's a hot and cold pressure systems coming together, whipping energy around and things go down in the process. Could be like it could even be a fear of intimacy because once, people who have a fear of intimacy attract mates that it feels like they're unavailable and they actually get rejected, but that's safer than really being vulnerable and showing up. So some of that unconscious energy can appear as a tornado because you're not really like aware of it or consciously doing it, but you got this energy out there running around about to tear everything down again. There it goes again. Like, you know what I mean? That sort
yeah.
of thing. So you have
Wow.
to say, how are you like a tornado? And you have to look more at each individual dream, like to get more information about how it's changing your life, whether it's good or bad, and look for the weird things. Like you could say, well, dreaming of a tornado a lot is weird, but not really. Natural disaster dreams are usually referencing kind of like rebuilding the foundation of our beliefs or something. That there's some sort of transformational change going on at sort of like at the nadir. I don't know if you know astrology, but at that real core low, the place that's our would be the solar plexus, the me, the deepest part of me.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm kind of dumbfounded here for a second because it makes sense, and like I shared it, I tend to have those at every kind of like bigger milestone, and those milestones tend to be when I'm reinventing something or
Hmm.
restarting something or starting a new path or getting rid of a bunch of things or like those kind of big moments when it tends to be my career. It's
Hmm.
always my career, to be honest with you. When that shifts, I can almost predict when I'm going to have a tornado dream because I'm like, oh, I've been changing a lot here lately.
Hmm.
Things are really changing right now. Where's the tornado dream?
Well, that's where I think dreams can really teach us about being present and conscious, right? Like when we can own the energy of change, like your tornado, the way that you're doing it, like what the tornado can teach you about whether it could be perfected, better, worse, it allows us dreams then allow us to kind of be more conscious of what we're doing and the personal responsibility that we're bringing to whether we're successful or not, like
Yeah.
how we can own our condition. Dreams are great for that too. And again, I think the most important part of dreams that people miss is that if you stop and recognize that everything is a mirror of some aspect of you, even other people, you're not dreaming of them because you're meant to talk to them tomorrow or whatever. You stop and think, well, what's an adjective I would use to describe Susie? Well, Susie's really like confident. Okay, well, how is confidence playing out for me right now? How should I adopt or discard some sense of confidence? Because Susie's showing up to kind of reflect that back to me. So I think when people can recognize that dreams, everything in the dream, even the landscape, lighting, day or night, whatever, it's reflecting your inner world. Sometimes the dream can make more sense. And also recognizing that they're more metaphorical. The symbols will never be literal. Water's more emotion. The trees can represent like roots, family roots, and what's happening with the tree, commitment to some process, or so there's kind of more of a symbolic explanation for what's appearing on our dream.
I love how you shared that the dream is a mirror of you, because I think sometimes, especially when people from our past pop up in our dreams, it's like, oh, should I call that person, or are they thinking of me, or, you know, did I not solve this problem, or is there still something there? I mean, people's minds
Mm-hmm.
go all different directions, but really what you're saying is when people from our life show up, it's not about that person, it's about a quality of that person within ourself. Am I
Yep.
understanding that right?
Yep, that we're exploring, which then brings us to the other side of it about, the things that we project onto people in daily life, like the people that we're drawn to or surround ourselves with, or so, yeah, there's definitely the idea that it's the quality that you associate with them that you're kind of exploring when they show up in the dream.
Interesting. This is fascinating stuff, my friend. I can see how I mean it's just you could go in and down and through, and there's just so many different ways to go about this. For somebody that might be new to interpreting their dreams or just starting to explore it, what's a good place for them to start? How can they start to explore this part of themselves more?
I think, being, I always say, like, before you go to sleep, like, tell yourself you want to remember your dream. That can sometimes just bringing that into like our intention, sometimes can help us start remembering our dreams, to have something to record with or write down, when you're first waking again, before you bring your analytical mind into it, just be gentle and just write down kind of a few symbols. And then, I have on my website, there's a dream dictionary. In fact, there's, when you go to the website, there's also like a cloud, and you type your whole dream in, and it will give you all of the symbols. And I did that because a lot of times people don't think to look up, portions of the dream that are also that are symbolically representing something. So you can kind of get like a list of all the things that showed up in your dream, and kind of explore it. Yeah, and then like when I look for the weird stuff, I can't stress that enough. Like how I used to I used to always describe it like the Trojan horse, that, oh, that thing looks very innocent. Let's let it in. And that's kind of what's going on. Like these dreams are breaking through all the walls that you've erected, so that you don't have to get out of your comfort zone, or you don't have to change. And so that weird thing, that symbol that's bizarre, often is like, wow, like when I said, how are you, the tornado, or how's that tornado representing you? That like shakes you a little bit to go, oh, okay. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense because there is not a single thing that I've ever read or looked up that has said that. But when you said it, I was like, oh, that lands. That lands. So look for the weird stuff, my friends. That's where the hidden messages are.
And people are going to go, everything's weird in a dream.
Everything's weird. Yeah, like the one time that I dreamt that I was a meatball. Okay. So where is the symbolism in that? I was a giant meatball. It must have been 8 feet wide, and I had these little tiny arms, and I was just sitting. I was just a meatball.
Yeah, but there's something delicious about that. Like it's your association to the meatball, and whether you're like I almost see it as like marketing direction. Like I don't know, like what's on the menu, and what is it that people will find delicious. Like, you might have
Fascinating.
you might have dreamt of being the meatball as, like, And it also, what's also really cool to work with so many people with their dreams for so long is what I start to, you can really see a person's character and psyche just from, like, I don't even have to know somebody or ever see them, but they'll tell me a few dreams, and it's like I can already see how they put themselves together, because that's the other fascinating things about dreams, is that dreams show us how we're constructing our idea of life. You know, they're like, some people dream a lot about meadow and mazes, and like, then they're kind of more of that, not, I would say, like, not emotionally wearing everything on their sleeve. They're a little bit more clinical and analytical, and you can see how dreams sort of like start to really describe that, the inner person. So it sounds like your, like, meatball dream to me would be something related to how you're promoting yourself, and it looks quite delicious, actually.
I love that. See, we just all need Kari in our worlds, because that it's just fascinating what our minds and our bodies do.
Exactly.
When we're in that unconscious state. It's just fascinating. Kari, I have just absolutely adored this conversation. I feel like I could keep talking to you for days, but I want to make sure that everyone knows where they can get in touch with you and find all these amazing tools that you have online.
Well, my website is Cafe Au Soul. So it's CAFE and then AUSOUL, Cafe Au Soul. So, like I said, if you do remember your dreams, you can type it in, get an interpretation, or if you don't, there's always the oracles that seem to tell the same story.
And just
And
so
you,
everybody knows, I'm going to plug you here for a second, because in your submission, I learned that your website has 2 million unique viewers every month. I mean, people are coming to you for information, my friend. That's impressive.
yeah, that's nice, because I think it's like, it also has a lot of inspiration drawn from nature, like what nature can teach us about the human journey. So, along with the oracles, it's very nature focused. So, I think people like that.
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. We'll make sure we link everything down in the show notes, my friends. And Kari, one last question. What does gutsy mean to you?
Gutsy means like figuring out who the heck you are and getting everybody out of the way, and being able to express it without second guessing yourself.
Oh, yes, that needs to go on a billboard. That is the description. Kari, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your knowledge, your beautiful energy. This has just been so fascinating. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, Laura. It's nice being here.
I don't know about you, but I find this stuff absolutely fascinating. I mean, getting some of my dreams interpreted helped me to get such a wider perspective on some things that I was experiencing during those moments. I would highly encourage you to go to Kari's website. Again, it's linked in the show notes. All of her resources are going to be in there, and her website is a powerhouse. And you know what? I'm super interested. So if you find something out about your dreams, I would love for you to DM me. I am on all the social platforms using @thatlauraora. And as always, until I see you next time, stay gutsy.